What got me into loving sci-fi is really going back to my earliest memory of the one thing that got me into the genre, and that was watching the movie Star Trek: The Motion Picture. As a kid, at my age, just watching that movie for the very first time on VHS and just loving the movie. I mean, I got into the characters of Kirk and Spock and McCoy and just the story of the V'Ger machine and just really the style of the movie. And even as a kid, I just loved it. I mean, it was a great film, and even it was just a great film. It really launched the great Star Trek movie franchises that we know of today. And since then, I just getting first introduced to Star Wars and Battlestar Galactica and even to Stargate, and just moving on to 2005 when I get introduced to the Doctor Who franchise. But going back into my first experience, even watching the movie Star Trek: The Motion Picture, you know, at that time I didn't know there was an original series, the TV series, but what got me into loving sci-fi really goes back to that movie, Star Trek: The Motion Picture. My favorite sci-fi TV show, I think it's a tie. Stargate SG-1 and Star Trek: The Original Series. Stargate SG-1, which started in 1997, great sci-fi show. I mean, I love the show, just Richard E. Anderson and his wits and humor, and, you know, with the other guys like Michael Shanks playing Dr. Jackson, and Amanda Tapping, Chris Judd, and all the bad guys to Jaffa, and it's just a great show. Lasted 10 seasons, just really a great written show that will always speak to me, one of the greatest shows of the history of science fiction in general. Star Trek: The Original Series, I would have to say, is another one. Going back to 1966, and a show that was meant to fail, but live on to this day as really the cult, the epitome of cult classic in many cases. But I enjoyed it because it was it was a low budget, kind of a cheesy show, but it was all driven by a storyline, the character driven, and just a lot of just great fun through the 3 seasons that show went. And so between those two, it's the time as my favorite TV show for the world of science fiction. My favorite science fiction movie. Like I said earlier, with the one movie, the one thing that led me into loving sci-fi, Star Trek: The Motion Picture is up there. But it's a tie once again, being Star Trek: The Motion Picture. The recent Star Trek film that I watched, which I gotta say is my favorite modern science fiction movie that goes around, and even I haven't seen the new Avatar yet. But between Star Trek: The Motion Picture and Star Trek, the latest one, it has to be up there as my top 2, but it's still really not that one favorite sci-fi movie that goes around, and there's a lot. I mean, the Star Wars franchise, all 6 movies, to Serenity, that short-lived movie that came out. It's just a lot of them, because it's hard for me to pick one single movie that is my favorite science fiction movie of all time, because they're all good. There are bad ones, but between any of them, if I have to go pick with one, it has to be Star Trek: The Motion Picture and J.J. Abrams' Star Trek. But there's a lot of them, and it's hard for me to pick even one. In my opinion, science fiction is one of the greatest genres in the history of Hollywood. I mean, with the exception of fantasy, science fiction is one of the only genres where your imagination can run free. I mean, writers can freely think of whatever they want as far as a story for television or film, or anything in between. The sky's the limit when it comes to the genre of science fiction. I mean, you think of drama and comedy and action. I mean, you have limitations for those. When it comes to science fiction, the sky's the limit. I mean, you think of the greatest franchises in the history of science fiction: Doctor Who, Star Trek, Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, Stargate. Any of those 5 franchises probably would not work when it comes to a straight-up comedy, straight-up drama, or straight-up action. Any of those franchises would not work. But in science fiction, all these 5 genres, these 5 franchises, are revered as known as the greatest franchises in the history of science fiction. And to me, that's the reason why it's my favorite. I mean, it's just a great genre of a history that really goes back a long way, and that's why it's one of the greatest genres in Hollywood. To me, without it, it'd almost be boring to me. But yeah, it's why it's one of my favorites, and in my opinion, one of the greatest genres in the history of Hollywood. What led me to radio, more specifically to internet radio, I just love the opportunity that people can have where they can go on the internet and really express their opinions on any specific thing. I mean, to me, when I first did an internet radio show in 2005, I just had a blast. And when I started the Elite Force podcast in 2008, it just really was fun to do. And really, internet radio is such a great venue that people can use to really just have fun with it. I mean, unlike terrestrial radio where, all the corporations and all that type of crap put together, and internet radio is just the sky's the limit. You don't need to have a corporation saying what to do or something like that. All you need to do is put your time and effort into really creating the best show that you can. And to me, that's fun to do. It's a great hobby for me. And it's something I've enjoyed ever since 2005, and something I look forward to doing again. And this is it's a really great thing to do, and something that I love to do, with the fact that I'm talking about one of my most favorite genres of all time in science fiction, and something that I hope you guys enjoy listening to for the Elite Force podcast.